Stephen Donald, take 5.
Hi, I'm Stephen Donald, All Black 1075, and this is my trophy cabinet. This is the jersey that I played for the All Blacks for the very first time. It was against England at Eden Park. It's obviously a special moment, running out for the first time to do what you'd always dreamt about doing since you were 3 or 4. I'd sat on the bench the previous week against Ireland in Wellington, and for those that might remember, it was coming in sideways. We were sitting on the bench with a whole lot of tracksuits and stadium jackets and hand warmers. And obviously I wanted to get out there. I had all these friends and family come down to Wellington to watch my debut, we thought. But I remember talking to Smithy after the game, and he said, "You're not going to have your debut in that. We're going to put you out there in that." So I had to wait another week, which when you have never been capped is a stressful week because you're thinking, is this ever going to happen? But to happen at Eden Park, which is where you'd always dreamed of playing, packed house against England. The job was already done by the time I got out there for my little 15 minutes, but obviously a night you never forget. Obviously, first time in the All Blacks, so very daunting because although you'd played against these guys who are now your teammates, it was still a bit of a shock to look around and call them your teammates, and you know they were developing into your friends themselves. You know, obviously Mills from the Chiefs was there, who was at his prime then, and DC was the best 10 going around, and Conrad and the likes, and my schoolmate was Sitiveni was there, and he scored an amazing try that night actually. So yeah, it was pretty special. I obviously got my cap that night. I remember Desi gave that to me in the shed. The traditions there too, but no, just a very, very special night at Eden Park, which I never known how special Eden Park was until you're playing there in front of a full house. Everyone's dressed in black. It is something else. This jersey here, my second year in the All Blacks. Well, I guess that's important to me because I didn't get a whole lot of those. But this one here was the Test match at Eden Park against the Wallabies, the opening game of the Tri-Nations of '09. I guess why it's special to me is DC had been hurt that year when he went off to Montpellier on a sabbatical. So I'd sort of been given the keys there in the first part of the Test series against, I don't know, who was that against? France and Italy. Tore the sheath, I think they call, off my hamstring. And they said you're out for weeks and weeks, and I thought, geez, that's my luck. If I finally get my chance and I'm out injured. But worked hard to get back, got back for about 3 weeks, and got myself into contention, fit enough to play the opening of the Tri-Nations. And it was Aussie at Eden Park. Aussie were flying. They were coming over to break their hoodoo at Eden Park, and you know we were going to be the first team in how many years, 15 or 20 probably at the time, to lose at Eden Park. And playing at 10 that night, obviously, you know, as sometimes was the case with my career, I was heavily criticised leading into that Test match, and managed to get the job done with the boys that night. And again, it was the magic of Eden Park. It wasn't 45,000 because that was the year they were rebuilding it. So half of it was demoed, and they just had a temporary stand there on the side, which we'd now call the main stand that you run out of. But that was special in itself because it was so close. It was a wet old night, and it was a superstar Australian team that came across. Matt Gitto was at 10, and he was, you know, going around as the best 10 probably in world rugby. So to stand up that night was pretty special, and that's why I guess this jersey, you know, it wasn't my first start for the All Blacks, but it was the start that I certainly very fond of, because I guess with everything leading into the game, it was pretty special. It was a special night, obviously, for what I touched on, and it was also, I guess, a night because, you know, goal kicking wise, it came down to it in the end, and I remember missing my first one. And obviously, you never want to miss your first one because you always set back in your confidence a bit when you miss your first one. But luckily, got into the rhythm after that. I remember pre-game, actually, you obviously always warm up at an end. And Steve Hansen, our assistant coach at the time, said, "Stuff it, boy. Go down the other end and get some practice down there too, because it's different to what you're used to here with no stands on one side." I said, "Oh, no, they're down there." And he goes, "I'll watch over you, you go down." So I went down and had a couple of cheeky ones down there, and they're looking at you a bit strange because it's not something you usually do, but in the end it paid off because things were a little bit different that night at Eden Park from a win point of view. So yeah, old Shag, wise old man. Yeah, the next thing that's obviously pretty special is the William Morales Trophy. I mean, at one stage, certainly never thought I was going to be part of that. I remember It's funny, I'd have only been 3, but I do remember myself playing in the backyard and always scoring tries and punching the ground, which, of course, the great David Kirk did when they won the very first. And as I've only been 3 or 4, so I don't know how that stuck with me, or if I just was on TV or what have you, but that was always what I did in the backyard. And, you know, your first dream is to be an All Black, and then once you're in the All Blacks, you start looking ahead and you're thinking, geez, wouldn't mind being part of a World Cup winning All Black team, because obviously at the time there was so much history about us not winning it. So being in New Zealand again, there's no doubt the eyes were very firmly fixed on being part of the 211 squad. A few events, unfortunately, led to me not being a part of a 211 squad, and I guess, you know, there's no hiding from the fact that my dreams were shattered, and I never thought that I was going to be, I guess, having the chance to celebrate, to drink, to hold out of the William Ellis Trophy. But obviously a miraculous turn of events led me to that point, and I ended up in a jersey which apparently was about 5 sizes too small. I don't have the jersey with me here because before in my rush from leaving after World Cup celebrations to flying to Bath to play in the Premiership, I packed up my house a bit and put a few things in a lock-up in Hamilton. But yeah, the jersey thing, obviously everyone always talks about. Our kit man at the time, the great Poss, it's not his fault. It was my own fault. He used the athletic professional rugby body of mine as my sizing, and he didn't know that I'd had a pretty lazy 6 weeks when I wasn't a part of the World Cup, pretty social 6 weeks, and I found my bakery and everything else. So I didn't fit it well, and I wouldn't have even known, to be honest with you. When I was playing, you know, it was just, jersey a bit tight sort of thing. But I remember Pity at one stage, mid-second half, saying, Beaver, pull your jersey down, you look like a... And I'm thinking, Pity, we're in a World Cup final here. It's a very strange thing to be saying to me. Then after we won it, we went on a lap of honour, and, you know, finally, you know, I was getting a bit of love from the crowd, and, you know, after a pretty tough year from crowds, I was thinking, this is nice. And then all of a sudden people started coming at me about wearing a tank top. So it wasn't until then that I started to realise, maybe this isn't quite right. But it wasn't Aaron Cruden's jersey, like a lot of people accuse it of being, but no, it's obviously going to be a special part of my life, this jersey. My 3-year-old could probably fit it at the moment, but it's probably the only time he'll ever fit it because it wasn't the biggest. But no, it's a special part. And I mean, looking back now, to think I was a part of a team that won the William Ellis. So this is obviously the Bledisloe Cup. I guess outside the Webb Ellis, it's the most prestigious and one that means the most to New Zealanders. The only test match I ever went to as a kid was a 6-3 Bledisloe at Eden Park. We sat on the terraces. It's a horrible, boring, cold, wet day, and I'm surprised that I ever wanted to be an All Black after that. But it was a childhood memory. But then again, I sort of made a decision as I got older. I was like, right, the next test match I'm going to be at is going to be, I'm going to be playing in it. So that was the goal. But the Bledisloe, obviously special to all New Zealanders, particularly special in my sort of thought process in life, because my first year sort of had probably 6 or 7 games for the All Blacks, but they were always 10 minutes, 15 minutes here, and it was always job was done. Obviously from the boys, and particularly Desi had already done the job and got the points for us, and I was just coming on and getting a cap and playing, you know, with no pressure and a bit of fun sort of thing. So although you're an All Black and you're capped by that stage, you're sort of still thinking, am I really an All Black just yet? Have I got the respect yet? And we came back to Brisbane after the boys had again done a great job in Cape Town, and I'd got about 5 minutes at the end and kept the Tri-Nations alive. And it came back to Brisbane, and it was a do or die against the Wallabies who were flying at the time too, and it was a Tri-Nations and Bledisloe decider in the end. Had an interesting week. We'd sort of flown over from New Zealand. We'd just had a sort of a late organised game against Samoa where I had 40 minutes, and we put 100 on them, so it wasn't like you were playing yourself into contention or anything like that. But with 25 to go, we were down by about 8. And I was sitting on the bench and thinking, oh, well, probably won't get much time tonight because this is well and truly going down to the wire if we've got a chance here. Funny enough, just all of a sudden, the medicos and that say, Beaver, you're out. And I was like, oh, me? Well, we're bringing Desi off with 25 to go, and even more of a shock. No, you're going on for Ma. I was like, geez, we need points here. Ma's the best runner in world rugby. We need to get this 8 points back for us. But they decided 25 to go, but I was going to go out there. pushed Desi out to 12, and the rest is wonderful history. And after that game and that night, it was the first time that I sat back and I was like, sort of, just internally thought, you deserve to be here now. Like, you haven't just come on for these caps at the end and got your numbers, really. That was a night that you contributed. It was a tough situation and it was something I'm pretty proud of. And a night at Suncorp, one of the great stadiums of the world too, that you'd never forget, and with a great bunch. And it was quite an interesting week because leading up to the game, I was on music committee, being my first year. And it was me and my great mate John Afar. And John thankfully had carried the entire Tri-Nations and June Test series. And then he had just randomly said to me this week, right, there's probably going to be a party because it's the last game. You're in charge of sorting that out. So all week, obviously I learnt my moves and stuff, but I was that stressed about this playlist that I was having to sort out on my iPod at the time. And I was getting everyone's different computers and getting all the music. And I hardly thought about the game outside of the training sessions because I was that stressed about the music list for the party back at the hotel. And thankfully, we won the game, and the party back at the hotel out on the deck there at one of the hotels in Brisbane was one of the great nights. And I think the playlist got told to repeat more than twice. It was about a 3 or 4 time repeat, so that means the crowd was happy. I haven't got my jerseys that I'm going to talk to you about now with me, but pretty special ones for me. My former schoolmate, he was a former flatmate, and I was his taxi driver. Sitiveni Sivavadu, hands down, I always tell people he's the best player I've ever played with. Not the best trainer I've ever played with, not the best student of the game, but when he was on fire and you got to see him from up close, there was nothing else like him. But more important than that, he was one of my great mates. When I first made the All Blacks, obviously he knew how much I wanted to be there. He knew how special being there was for me, and that I didn't really want any other jersey other than the All Black jersey, because that's all I'd ever craved. He would go and swap for about the first 4 or 5 weeks I was in there. He would go and swap his jersey, and I remember it was Ireland, England, and Aussie. He'd go and swap his jersey, and then he'd just go and drop it at my feet in classic City way, and I'd just chuck it in my bag and know it was a gift from him, and all special. Obviously, I think Shane Horgan was one, the Irish winger. Lottie DeCaria was one, great Wallaby, but I guess the one that actually meant the most to me, I've never told him that though, was the one when he actually dropped his own one at my feet and said, I'll take this. Yeah, he's a pretty unique individual and a very special part of my life, and for him to do that, I'll never forget that. And when I finally get my big bar or man cave sorted, this jersey will sit pride and place in there, that's for sure. Yeah, also in here is obviously the Rugby Cup, which I guess is a relatively modern trophy that the All Blacks play for South Africa, and a particular moment in my career in the All Blacks, which won't go down in the history books as highly successful, but I guess for personally, no greater test than going to South Africa and playing them back to back when they were at the height of their powers. They'd won the 07 World Cup in 09 when, on what I'm talking about, they just rolled the Lions in a series and done it in a very powerful South African manner. Their team list reads like it's an all-time Springbok team. It was quite something, and again, this is the year that DC has done the Achilles damage, so I was in the 10 jersey, and I remember going into Bloemfontein. It was the first ever test match at Bloemfontein, where a lot of the South Africans at the time were from. Unbelievable atmosphere. We were nowhere near our best that day, but we somehow hung in and only got pipped right on full time when I think Jacques Ferry must have scored one late in the corner off a bit of a mistake of ours, a bit of an intercept. And then the following week at Kings Park, which again, one of the great stadiums, steep stands, and they're just into you, and they were too good for us that day. And then a rather bizarre turn of events, we ended up back at Hamilton in the same year, and through injuries to our midfielders in a week or two earlier at Stadium Australia against the Wallabies, and I'd gone on at second five again, and it worked well enough for coaches to decide that they were going to start me at 12 outside Desi and I think inside Ma. So although we actually dropped all three in the end, and it won't go down obviously in the history books of the All Blacks as a successful time, but for an individual, I don't think ever felt an examination like it, of your rugby ability, of your courage, of your manhood. It was something else, and yep, it would have been great to have got the results, but it's something I guess I do treasure, the fact that went through the absolute ringer against probably the best team I've ever played against. Obviously, people would say that again when they play the All Blacks, but hands down the best rugby team I've ever been on the field with. And it was, as I say, it was a test of so many things.